Night. The New Mexico desert. A blinding light flashes in the sky, as if the universe itself had momentarily decided to tear apart the veil of reality. A few seconds later, a roar echoes, leaving a trail of smoke and hot metal in the sand. July 1947. An event that changed not only the life of the small town of Roswell, but also all of modern history. More than 70 years have passed since then, but millions of people still debate, what really happened? Was it a weather balloon? A military experiment? Or did humanity that night first encounter proof that we are not alone in the universe? The Roswell incident became more than just a story about the crash of a mysterious object. It became a myth, a symbol, the center of an entire universe of conspiracy theories, where facts, rumors, fictions, and secrets intertwine. And every new document, every eyewitness testimony, every declassified archive only adds to the mystery, but does not provide a definitive answer. Why has this event haunted people for decades? Why, even after so many years, does talking about it still evoke trepidation and curiosity? It's not just the debris itself. It's that Roswell became the point where humanity's fears and hopes converged. In this video, we'll delve deeper into this story. We'll explore all the versions from the official one to the most mystical. We'll recall eyewitness accounts and compare them with military reports. We'll delve into declassified documents and the legends that have grown up around this event. And most importantly, we will try to understand why the Roswell incident still remains one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. Get ready. This story will take us to the very heart of the mystery. Chapter 1. Eyewitness Accounts. The July night of 1947 was dark but quiet. Suddenly, a piercing roar shattered the silence, and a flash of light lit up the sky. Many residents of the area claimed to have seen a bright object fly across the sky, leaving a tail behind and crash somewhere in the desert. Brazel was the first to arrive at the scene. He reported finding strange debris on his ranch, shiny metal strips that couldn't be bent or broken. Some of the materials resembled the thinnest foil, but when compressed, they straightened out again, as if they were alive. Later, eyewitnesses claimed to have discerned among the debris fragments bearing incomprehensible symbols resembling hieroglyphs. These stories were repeated for decades, like a legend passed down by word of mouth. Soon, the military arrived and cordoned off the area. Everything the farmer had found was confiscated. People were ordered to remain silent, and the newspapers received conflicting messages. It was precisely this duality that became the basis of the future mystery. At first, they officially announced the discovery of a flying saucer, but just a day later, the military denied everything. Chapter 2. Weather Balloon. This is the official explanation given by the authorities a few days later. According to the U.S. Army, there was no flying saucer in Roswell. The crashed object was simply a weather balloon used to monitor weather patterns and possibly test for the Mogul program, a secret project to monitor Soviet nuclear tests. At first glance, this theory seems logical. Indeed, at that time, the United States was actively testing sounding balloons equipped with sensors and radars. They often crashed, broke, and left behind piles of debris. But this version has many contradictions. Eyewitnesses claim the debris didn't resemble ordinary materials. It looked far more durable and unusual. Farmer Brazel claimed he found hundreds of fragments over a vast area, and it all looked as if the object had exploded in midair. This was too large for a conventional probe. Newspapers reported that the military itself initially confirmed the discovery of a flying saucer. Why did they suddenly change their story? Some researchers are convinced that the weather balloon theory was merely a cover story intended to distract attention from the real events. But here's the strange thing. If it really was just a probe, why was so much secrecy necessary? Why was everything confiscated immediately removed? And why were the witnesses silenced? An ordinary weather balloon would hardly have caused such a reaction. Chapter 3. Secret Military Developments. When the military rushed to dismiss the flying saucer story and replaced it with a weather balloon, many researchers began to wonder, what if it really wasn't a UFO, but not just a probe either? What if one of the US's secret military projects had crashed in Roswell? In the late 1940s, the United States was in the midst of the Cold War. The USSR was actively developing nuclear weapons, and America was terrified of a surprise attack. Therefore, all available resources were devoted to intelligence and the development of new technologies. The official weather balloon theory is in fact closely linked to Project Mogul. Its goal was ambitious: to create a system of high-altitude balloons equipped with sensitive equipment to detect sound waves from nuclear explosions in the Soviet Union. From a technical standpoint, it seemed plausible. Mogul used clusters of enormous spheres to which reflectors and sensors were attached. The structure could reach tens of meters in length and truly resembled something alien. However, there's a problem here. Roswell witnesses didn't describe the debris as fragile aluminum structures or rubber balls. They spoke of strange alloys that couldn't be bent, of shape-recovering materials, and of mysterious symbols. None of this matches the description of the Mogul. Another theory claims that an experimental aircraft or unmanned vehicle crashed in Roswell. At the time, the U.S. Air Force was actively testing aerodynamic innovations, from flying wings to disc-shaped prototypes created based on German designs after World War II. This theory explains why the military so hastily seized all the debris and prohibited witnesses from speaking. Any leak of information about such technology could have jeopardized national security. But the question remains, why did they initially report a flying saucer? Was it a mistake in the press release? Carelessness? Or was it deliberate disinformation? Another lesser-known theory is that nuclear energy technologies were being tested in the New Mexico deserts. Some researchers speculate that the debris could have been part of secret reactors or radioactive containers. This explanation could explain the military's haste. Radioactive materials couldn't be left in plain sight. But then, why didn't eyewitnesses report radiation, burns, or other symptoms? The theory of military development remains one of the most plausible. It explains the secrecy, the Army's quick response, and the government's contradictory statements. But it has one weakness. Too many things contradict eyewitness accounts. If this was a secret device, why did the witnesses see materials that didn't resemble anything on Earth? Why did they report strange symbols? Too many details remain unexplained. Chapter 4. UFO Crash in Alien Bodies. While previous theories can be viewed through the prism of science and politics, it was this one, the alien one, that made Roswell a legend for decades. It spawned endless debates, books, films, and investigative documentaries. Soon after the 1947 event, stories began circulating that not only debris, but also strange bodies had been found at the crash site. Eyewitnesses described them as small figures, about 120 centimeters tall, with large heads and thin limbs. Their faces were elongated, and their eyes were disproportionately large and pupilless. One of the first to voice such rumors was an officer from the airbase who was participating in the debris recovery operation. In shock, he told his wife and friends that he had seen inhuman forms. Later, these stories began to multiply like ripples in a pond. The archives contain testimony from a nurse who served at the Roswell Air Force Base Hospital. She claimed that she had been involved in examining unknown bodies that night. According to her, the creature's internal organs were unlike human ones. The organs were arranged differently, and the tissues had an unusual density. Years later, this story resurfaced when her fellow soldiers confirmed that something strange had indeed happened. But they were forced to keep the details a military secret. One of the most striking aspects was the descriptions of debris with unknown symbols. People spoke of thin strips of metal covered with some kind of writing or ornamentation. These weren't letters or numbers, but something closer to ancient hieroglyphs, but with an unearthly geometry. One eyewitness claimed that when a child attempted to bend such a fragment, the metal immediately returned to its original shape, as if it were alive. Such properties simply did not exist in terrestrial alloys of that time. Hangar 18 was rumored to exist there. It is said that the remains of aliens and their spacecraft were stored there for decades. According to this theory, American engineers were attempting to reverse engineer the operation of UFO technology. Some researchers link this to the subsequent technological advances in the United States, the advent of microchips, fiber optics, and lasers. Coincidence? Or the fruits of alien engineering? In 1995, the world was rocked by a scandal. The so-called alien autopsy film surfaced. It showed military doctors allegedly dissecting the body of the creature found in Roswell. Although the film was later declared a fake, many believe it merely mimicked real events. The footage so shocked society that the legend of the alien corpses became firmly entrenched in the public consciousness. This is where the main question arises. If alien bodies were actually found, why wasn't it announced? The answer is simple: a shock to society. In 1947, the world had barely recovered from World War II, and humanity stood on the brink of nuclear conflict. The news that we were not alone in the universe could have caused mass panic, shattered religious dogma, and called into question the authority of states. This is why the military may have decided to hide the truth by passing it off as a weather balloon. Chapter 5. The Soviet Trace and Experiments on People. This theory is one of the most terrifying and, at the same time, the most controversial. Its proponents claim that what happened near Roswell in the summer of 1947 was not an alien visitation at all. Instead, it was the result of a monstrous experiment orchestrated by human hands. It first made headlines in 2011 when American researcher Annie Jacobson published a book about classified U.S. Air Force operations. It suggested that the debris near Roswell might not have been an alien craft at all, but a top-secret Soviet aircraft. The idea was that Stalin, shocked by the impact of Orson Welles' 1938 radio broadcast of The War of the Worlds, allegedly decided to conduct his own psychological experiment. The goal was to cause panic in the United States by making Americans believe in a real alien invasion, the terrible price of experiments. According to this hypothesis, the USSR created an experimental apparatus that resembled a flying saucer. But the most terrifying thing was the crew. Jacobson claims the cabin contained biological creatures created through monstrous experiments. Their appearance, small bodies, disproportionately large heads, strange eyes, was not due to an alien origin, but to genetic or surgical manipulation. Some conspiracy theorists even claim that Josef Mengele himself, the Nazi angel of death, who escaped Europe and collaborated with the USSR, allegedly participated in these experiments. His goal was to create creatures capable of appearing alien. Disaster over New Mexico. According to this version, one of these devices crashed in July 1947. American military personnel, upon discovering the debris and bodies, initially believed they were dealing with aliens. But later, when forensic examinations revealed their all-too-human origin, the decision was made to conceal the truth. After all, if the world had learned that the USSR was capable of creating such technologies and conducting monstrous experiments, the consequences would have been unpredictable. This theory sparked a storm of emotions. Some considered it too far-fetched, others terribly plausible. After all, we mustn't forget, the Cold War had already begun, and in the secret laboratories of both superpowers, things were happening that we still only know fragments about. American authorities denied the very possibility of such experiments. But supporters of this theory are certain that this is precisely why there are so many mysteries and contradictions surrounding Roswell. Why is this version so terribly plausible? A coincidence in timing. 1947, the beginning of the Cold War, the race for nuclear and psychological superiority. Similar descriptions. The bodies of the aliens could easily have been crippled humans or genetic mutants. The USSR's motive to cause chaos and undermine American confidence in their own government. This version adds not only mysticism, but also horror to the story. After all, if true, it means that man himself is capable of experiments more terrifying than even the wildest alien fantasies. Chapter 6. Secret U.S. Experiments and New Technologies. If the Soviet trace theory sounds like a Cold War nightmare, then the hypothesis that the Roswell disaster was the work of the Americans themselves seems even more plausible. Many researchers are convinced that the saucer was neither Soviet nor alien. It was a secret American aircraft, developed as part of classified military programs. July 1947, the United States had just won World War II, dropped atomic bombs on Japan, and was now seeking to consolidate its military superiority. The country's Air Force was actively developing new weapons, including experimental aircraft. According to this version, one of these projects, a flying disc or an aerodynamic platform of an unusual shape, crashed. Evidence in favor of this version: the nature of the debris. Witnesses described an unusual metal, thin as foil but resistant to deformation. Skeptics claim it could have been prototypes of new alloys developed for aviation or space. Conflicting statements from the military. Initially, they officially claimed to have found a disc, then vehemently denied it and called it a weather balloon. This sudden shift in narrative could have been explained by an attempt to conceal their own secret developments. Project Mogul. The Pentagon later announced that experimental balloons had indeed been launched in the Roswell area as part of Project Mogul, a program to monitor Soviet nuclear tests. But critics ask, if it was just a probe, why the secrecy and the collection of debris under cover of night? Aliens as dummies. There's a theory that the bodies found aren't creatures at all, but rather dummies used to test high-altitude catapults and parachutes. But this again raises the question, why did eyewitnesses describe them with such horrific detail? The most curious thing is what happened after 1947. Over the following decades, the United States made enormous technological advances. Integrated circuits appeared. Aviation and rocket science were actively developing. In a short time, the space race started. Conspiracy theorists wonder, could this be connected to the debris of the Roswell object? Even if it wasn't a UFO but a secret device, the technology found in it could have accelerated scientific progress. Why is this version convenient? The authorities are covering up their mistakes. The experimental apparatus's disaster could have damaged the Army's prestige. There's no need to acknowledge UFOs. The theory of our own inventions is simpler than the theory of an alien visit. Coincidence with a technological leap. Even skeptics admit that the progress of the 1950s and 1960s seems suspiciously rapid. However, this version leaves too many questions unanswered. If this was just a secret project, why are tens of thousands of classified Roswell-related documents still in existence? Why do witnesses continue to talk about non-human bodies? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the middle. The accident was indeed connected to military experiments, but the military found something in the wreckage that remains unexplained to this day. Chapter 7. Real Aliens. This version is the heart of the entire Roswell story. It's a version believed by millions, even though authorities and skeptics have been trying to disprove it for decades. Immediately after the fall of the object, local residents spoke not only of strange debris, but also of the bodies of unusual creatures. Farmer Mac Brazel spoke of materials that were impossible to bend, but later, according to his acquaintances, he admitted to having seen something even more terrifying. Several bodies of small humanoid creatures with disproportionately large heads and enormous eyes. Air Force officers who arrived at the scene privately hinted that what they found was unlike anything on Earth. The most terrifying stories came from doctors and military personnel allegedly cleared to the wreckage. They described, the height of the creatures is about 120 centimeters, huge heads and thin limbs, grayish or greenish skin, the absence of clothing in the usual sense. Only thin material that seems to have grown into the body. Some claim that some of the creatures died immediately, but one or two were alive and were under military observation for some time. These stories later took shape as a persistent myth. The U.S. government is hiding not only UFO debris, but also the bodies of aliens. In 1995, the world was shocked by a scandalous video known as the Roswell autopsy. The footage showed doctors in white coats dissecting the body of a strange humanoid. The creator later admitted it was staged, but added, the film was a reconstruction of real events. Once again, Roswell made headlines. Why is the alien theory so compelling? Too many witnesses. More than 600 people at various times claim to have seen either debris or bodies. The official explanations are inconsistent. Weather balloons and dummies don't explain all the details. The effect of scale. If it really was a UFO, then we are not alone in the universe. For decades, the U.S. government published more and more official reports. They repeated again and again. There were no aliens. But each new report only fueled interest. After all, if everything is so simple, why do thousands of documents remain classified to this day? Why did witnesses confess on their deathbeds, "I saw something that didn't belong on our Earth"? The alien theory adds a mystical depth to the story. What if it was after Roswell that the United States gained access to technologies that enabled it to make scientific breakthroughs? What if the aliens didn't crash by accident, but rather it was contact intended for humanity? Or maybe on the contrary, it was a warning. The theory of a genuine alien visit remains the most mystical, the most alluring, and the most terrifying. It forces us to ponder not only the mysteries of the past, but also our future. More than 70 years have passed since that fateful July day in 1947, when an explosion ripped through the New Mexico desert and a mysterious object fell to the ground. But the debate continues. What exactly was it? We've considered all the theories, from a weather balloon to a genuine alien spacecraft. Each is logical in its own way. Each has its supporters and detractors. And yet, none of them answers all the questions. None of them explains every detail. The most important question is, why were the authorities so eager to hush up the case? Why did the first official report claim a flying saucer was discovered, only to be hastily replaced the next day with a weather balloon? Over the years, we've seen dozens of excuses. We've been told about mannequins that were supposedly mistaken for aliens, about secret spheres created to spy on the Soviet Union, about panic among military personnel who didn't want to admit their mistakes. But the truth is always simple, and here we see too many complex explanations, too many versions presented one after another. Isn't this the main sign that there's a secret being carefully guarded? The most astonishing thing isn't the papers in the archives or the official reports. The most important thing is the people. Those who were there in Roswell. Those who saw with their own eyes the debris, the bodies, the glowing chunks of unknown material. Decades passed. Many witnesses died. But before they died, they shared their memories. And almost all said the same thing. It was not an earthly object. Can we trust the memories of the elderly? Can we believe the stories passed down from family to family? Skeptics will say no, but isn't memory more powerful than any piece of paper? Aren't human words more honest than dozens of classified pages? Many researchers are convinced that it was after Roswell that humanity took a dramatic leap forward. In a matter of decades, we emerged from the era of vacuum tube radios into the world of microchips, computers, and the internet. Coincidence? Perhaps, but this leap is far too rapid. Some believe that materials and technologies were found in UFO debris that served as the basis for new developments. Fiber optics, integrated circuits, super strong alloys, all of this seemed to appear out of the blue. Of course, official science objects. But the question remains, but behind all the facts and theories lies something more. The question is, if it was a UFO, if it really was aliens, what does that mean for us? Humanity has always looked to the sky. We believed in gods who descended from the heavens. We dreamed of distant worlds full of intelligent beings. And now in the mid-20th century, all of this could become reality. What if we're not alone? What if the universe is full of civilizations? Then Roswell isn't a disaster, it's first contact. Tragic, perhaps accidental, but real. Why does the Roswell mystery endure so vividly to this day? Because it's more than just a story about a crash. It's a symbol of our fear of the unknown, a symbol of our desire to know more than we're allowed. A symbol that somewhere beyond the sky might lie the answer to the ultimate question, are we alone in the universe? And every year, when another witness tells their story, and every time a new document is declassified, and every time we see a strange light in the night sky, the mystery of Roswell comes to life again. Or maybe this story itself isn't just a coincidence. Maybe Roswell is a test for humanity. We've encountered something we can't explain. We try to hide it, confuse it, forget it, but the mystery stubbornly returns. Because maybe the universe doesn't want us to remain in the dark. Maybe aliens are already among us. Maybe they're watching us, waiting for us to be ready. So, What happened in Roswell in the summer of 1947? We'll probably never know the truth, but maybe that doesn't matter. What's important is that this story makes us look to the sky. It makes us ask the questions that make us human, and the answers. The answers will come one day, and someday perhaps we will learn. What fell in the Roswell desert was only the beginning of a great mystery that will lead us to new worlds.